We've established that the first Amish settlement in America was in 1736. It's the first documented established settlement, and they settled in Pennsylvania. Now, during this time in American history, there was slavery. How did the Amish fit in with that? Did the Amish own slaves? Were they for it? Were they against it? And that's what we're going to talk about in this video today: slavery and the Amish in the 18th century in America. The European settlers that came to America during this time and in Pennsylvania did own slaves, but a lot of them only owned like one or two slaves. They did it more of a status symbol. For instance, a lot of times they would go down to Jamaica and then bring back a slave, and that would be kind of like a status thing. I have this person working for me for free. But how did the Amish fit into this? The Amish, actually, when they came with the Germans to settle in Pennsylvania, they kind of were mixed in with the culture, if that makes sense. Today, you can go out and see Amish buggies, and they dress differently, and we can pick them out very easily. But back at this time period, they came in and kind of integrated into the society. And I'll talk more about that in a couple future videos because it's very interesting. But they actually were some of the more, not elite, but more prosperous, and I'll tell you why. Many people that came to America during this time into Pennsylvania came as free labor or indentured servants, and that was the only way they could get here. In this time period in the American culture, there was only 25% of the population that were in Pennsylvania, in America, considered free people. Everybody else came as indentured servants, or they were bought, or they were slaves. So the Amish fell into this category and probably didn't even realize their status at that time, in that time of history. They were able to go get land and go more into the westward movement and acquire land, and it wasn't hard for them because they were free people. In Pennsylvania, it was legal to own a slave up until 1780, and even after that, many people who had slaves did not relinquish their slaves. There's no noted documents anywhere that say that the Amish owned slaves. So they did not. They did not believe in owning people. It was a humanitarian thing, and within the religion, it was just something that they didn't feel was right. Now, this is what they did instead. There was a system in place called is buying people's passage to come to America, and I know myself, I remember that being called indentured service. They also called it redemptioners, and the Amish did participate in this practice. What they would do if they had family or other Amish members that were in Europe and they wanted their passage paid to get to America, the Amish would pay for them to get there in return for labor. And they wanted skilled labor, though. They didn't say just come and work for me as a slave per se and cook and stuff. They wanted them to have a skill, and then they would agree on so many years of trading that labor for their services, and then they were free to go. And they called these people redemptioners. So the Amish did participate in that. Now, however, there also were Amish who would help pay the passage of family or friends, and they didn't require them to be redemptioners. They just asked them to pay it back. They really didn't want people to owe them. So when it came to family or maybe other community members, they didn't require that slave labor or redemption skills to be returned. One more interesting fact about this time period was a lot of times the redemptioners would come and provide their skill and their labor. And remember, they were participating in the Amish culture. They went to church with them. They lived with them for several years, whatever that agreement was. And many times they ended up joining the Amish church. So they must have been happy with the situation, or they wouldn't have joined. So interesting, our Amish ancestors did not participate in the slave trade per se that was going on in America at that time.